Check, check, check. Check 1, 2. Check an audio. Check an audio. Audio check. Check, check.
Oh, I wanted to share. You started the stream, right?
Uh,
All right, awesome. Hey, everybody, I am so stoked to be able to give you guys this presentation. I have given two presentations at ESC before. We don't need that. We don't need that. Um, and my friends that know me and know how like excited I get about this, they see me smiling and they know why I geek out on this stuff, right? So I want to kind of preface this by saying that I am no expert in ChatGPT. I've just been using it every single day since it came out in November. And I learned how to work the system, and my entire life has kind of been taken over by AI. Juan likes to call me the human AI now because everything I do is with it, right? So I've picked up a lot of things on how to work these systems and how they work and how you can apply them to your business because my background is that I've been in the digital marketing industry for 10 years and I've owned my own agency for 4. And throughout the entire course of my career, I've had to come up with really creative ways to solve problems, to sell deals, to make more revenue for my clients. And so I've got a really unique skill set when it comes to thinking and looking at situations that a business owner is facing. And one of the things that I talk about all the time with people when they ask me about ChatGPT and AI technology in general is really that if you look at all the problems that the market has right now, they pretty much all have a solution, right? There are very few blue oceans out there. And for those that don't know, a blue ocean is like an untapped market, right? But with the advent of AI, that has completely blown the lid off of that. There is no more ceiling when it comes to blue oceans and the scarcity of them because the ways in which we can look at the market and the problems that we have and that business owners are facing, we have a whole new lens to look at these problems with through the use of AI. So an example of that is obviously, right, somebody that has to go to school for 4 years to learn a job doesn't necessarily mean it's a lawyer or a doctor or somebody else like that, but something that's highly specialized. Now, all the person that needs to do to solve that problem is just know how to craft the AI and get the response out of that. And so, if you can go out and look at the different scenarios and problems that people are facing in business right now, and look at it from a creative angle of how can you apply this technology and AI to help solve this problem, you can potentially be one of the people that captures the trillions of dollars of market cap that's about to be shifted because of this technology. So this is not going to be like a prompt workshop. I don't know if anybody has any, that was the preconception of what this is going to be. I want to teach you kind of how these models work, how to interact with them. We will talk about some prompts, and then I'm going to tell you more about how you can use these solutions kind of in a creative way in your business. So I don't like to ever talk down to people or talk up to people. So I would love to kind of get a gauge of what everybody's knowledge level is. Who has used ChatGPT before or an AI tool? Okay, so everybody at the table. All right, except for you. All right. So who says they're a beginner? How about intermediate? All right. Who feels like they're your experience level? Who feels like they're advanced? They're writing code. They're using it to debug software and things like that. Nobody? Not you? Yeah. Okay. All right. So okay, great. So I think you guys are going to get a lot of really good value out of this. So, hold on, there we go. What are large language models? I'm not going to get too technical about this. And before I even get into it, I want to reiterate again, I'm no expert at this, right? I've just been doing it every single day. I've just been learning and understanding and tweaking and making minor changes to how I interact with these things and applying them to different situations. And everybody outside of the people that are actually creating this technology is pretty much in the same bucket, right? We all don't know. We can't really call ourselves experts because this mainstream technology has only been out since November. So widely publicly available, right? So, I say that when you look at the feeds, your social feeds, get 1,000 ChatGPT prompts or 10,000 GPT prompts, right? Those are good enough and they're kind of like cliche at the moment because you really need that understanding of how these things work. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. And the people who actually founded this technology and OpenAI specifically, they will tell you that they don't know how some of these things happen. Like, why does the model actually learn some of these things? They don't have a specific answer for it. So there is a lot of unknowns still left with this technology that we're still learning about and how to figure things out. So, but at the base of it, GPT-3 is a generative predictive pre-trained transformer. And essentially what that means is that this model, this AI model, has been fed a ton of data from the internet up to 2021. It's actually over 576 gigabytes of text data. When you think about text data, that's a lot of text data. Um, and so as you've gone through the iterations of how these models work, they've gotten progressively smarter. So and I want to talk about the difference between 3 and 4 in a second, but the training model basically is that there is a depository or repository of knowledge, of information. That's the database. And then there's models and a neural, what they call a neural net. It works like our brain to basically take in the information that you're giving it with your prompt, reference the database that it's trained off of, and then recognize the relationships between words in the database and all the data that it's been trained on, and try to predict the most likely next set of words from your prompt based on statistics and probability. So essentially, it is a very, very sophisticated word prediction engine, is essentially what it is. If I take a beat, I hold my breath, and this is me trying not to pass out up here. So what's the difference between GPT-3 and 4? If you used GPT-3.5 extensively and you felt like, you got a good handle on it, and then they rolled out 4 and you got to try it, chances are you probably didn't really feel like it was that much of an upgrade. And for most people, it kind of felt that same way. But the difference between GPT-3.5 and 4 is that they introduced something called reinforcement learning with human feedback. And basically, before the reward systems were like a voting system, right? This output was better than this one, or this one sucked. They ranked it, right? Additionally, with GPT-4 and this RLHF, they not only rank it, but they provide additional context like an English teacher would on a paper. This is why this makes sense here. And the engine remembers that feedback. And so the next time it comes across that situation, it's got this additional context that it can refer to and say, oh, well, last time, this is the most likely output. Let me try to give something that's like that in the future. And so that's the biggest difference. And because of that, what you've done is you've added a lot of context. I skipped so this is all kind of like stream of consciousness. This is the presentation is a guide reel, so I may forget some stuff. The other models are Lambda, Palm 2, which is Google. They announced an update to that yesterday at their I/O. Super awesome. If you're an Android person, AI is coming to your phone soon. Yeah, it's really awesome. And then Facebook's got the Llama model. Really, really cool name on that one. Love that. Um, so yeah, this whole paragraph basically is explaining the differences between GPT-3 and 4 and what a large language model is. And so the difference specifically is the capability of reasoning. And so if you've ever had to, all right, I want to have just one quick question. Who is using this as if they're speaking to an expert, or if they're speaking to somebody in conversational style? Is anybody doing this? So a few people in the room. Interesting. Okay, really great. So one of the most common things that I get asked is like, how can I make it better, or how can I do it better? And my simple answer is to talk to it as if you were a human, or as if it is a human, because it can like remember it and understand what you're saying and give you context and answers and nuance to this. And GPT-4 specifically does a great job with adding additional nuance. You can test this for yourself by adding or asking kind of a risky question amongst whatever type of industry you want. And it's going to come back with an answer, and it will also come back with the opposite side of that answer and ask you to consider both of those things. And so when you think about using ChatGPT 4 versus 3.5, if you want to have more complex like dialogue and interactions with this AI, that's where the difference between the two and the $20 is well spent, right? So if you want to like pitch a new business idea or learn how to make an app or code or something that's requiring a lot of like external stimulus and reasoning and nuance and context to it, that's where GPT-4 accelerates. So how to interact with LLMs, right? Here's how we do this, right? This is now we're getting into, all right, let me make a stopping point here. I've kind of explained how this works, right? I've given you some context of what essentially these engines are. They're word prediction engines, and they're trained with human weights, and they're also trained with machine learning weights to give a certain type of response based off of previous history in their training. And so now, with that information in mind, here is how you can interact with them before we get into the prompting. So when you're asking for it, be clear and specific with what you're asking for. If you kind of jump all over the place and you stream of consciousness into your prompt, you're going to confuse the model, because again, it's trying to predict words based off of a sequence of other words. And so if you're all over the place and you're missing punctuation, and you're not putting things in the right areas, you're going to confuse the model, and your outputs are going to be worse as a result of that. I said it earlier, treat it like a human, but understand that it is not a human. Treat it like an expert, because one of the things that's really cool and at the forefront of like AI is how do you make an artificial general intelligence like Jasper or I'm sorry, Jarvis from Disney, right? From Iron Man. And when you think about AI and large language models, think about ourselves. We have language, we have reasoning capabilities, and we've got a world perception of how we fit into the world around us. These language models only have the language, and so they're not able to really identify in certain situations or contexts or nuances and things like that. It's gotten better with the addition of the human feedback loop that's built into it, but it still lacks the capability of being able to understand and reference, which is an inference engine, a world perspective or a shared library of knowledge. And so that's why there are some deficiencies with just pure language models. And people that are like building this stuff are looking at creating, this artificial general intelligence that uses all three, right? It uses the reasoning engine to understand what your input is asking for, that references the world model, which is a library of knowledge, and then uses the language model to actually put it out in a coherent way so that people can get value out of it. So that was a long-winded explanation to treat it like an expert, but understand it can't, like it's not human, right? And so when I talk about interacting with this, you keep taking a step further. Instead of just, your 1 to 2 to 3 sentence exchange conversations with them, keep going. And especially with 4 versus 3.5, the conversation length gets a lot longer before they start to hallucinate. And I'll talk about hallucinations in a second, but keep going. And if you're able to get a piece of information out of the AI that really kind of strikes a thought with you, you can just basically kind of like freestyle with it and say, well, you just sparked an idea. How could I apply that? I did, this is a real example for me. I created a bunch of content for mental health professionals. I created a course library at the beginning of this year. And I actually created a new model for creating social media content. And what I did was I basically had an idea of what I wanted, and I knew it took elements from different like established social media frameworks. And I had it list those out, and it kind of gave me the pros and cons. And then I started piecing and choosing them together and say, I want to do this with these parts, and I want this to come out of it, and all of these different things. And it said, yeah, it'd be a great idea. Here's how you would execute that framework. And I created an entirely new social media framework from a blend of 4 other ideas. And so think about that and take that into your business if you're, considering expansion. Like have it play devil's advocate, right? What is the pros and the cons of this situation? What are some things that you didn't necessarily think about before? I'm getting ahead of myself. This is in a future section. Future section. Context and examples. The more context that you give it, again, because of this large prediction engine, the more context that you give it about what you're trying to write, the better the output is going to be. And that's the reason why, they wanted to keep pushing for these more on these token limits, which I'm going to get to in just a second, because you're able to provide more information and more quality data to the engine itself to give it more to work with to give you a good output. And so as you go through this process, thinking specifically about, how you work with it, rinse and repeat. That's distracting. Rinse and repeat on, what you're coming out with your conversations. Well, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Do your own version of human feedback, right? I didn't like the way that you did that because it doesn't line up with how my customers perceive the world. Or this is not necessarily a pain point. You were close to it, and you can give it additional information and adjust its perspective. And I wouldn't necessarily say that you're manipulating it, but you're positioning it in a way that you as the expert or the subject matter expert, or what you want, can get the desired output that you're looking for. The last thing is keep an eye out for inaccuracies, right? It does hallucinate, like especially with 3.5, right? You run into the token limits, which I've said it 5 times now, and I'm just going to go to it.
Watch out for what, Marcus?
Token limits.
You explain that.
Token limits? I would be happy to, Chase. Thanks for asking. So token limits, right? What is a token? What is a token? A token is essentially a word, a character, or space. And it's dependent on what different models you're using. Some models will break the word hello into 1 token. Some models will break it into 2 tokens. It's all dependent on the model and how it uses. But there's a rough rule of thumb that a word equals 2 tokens, right? And so when you look at GPT-3 and 4, GPT-3.5 has a token limit of 4,096. 97. which is roughly 8,000 words. GPT-4's token limit is 8,000 if you are on the base, if you got the lower tier access to it, or 32,000 tokens if you got developer access and higher access levels. And so think about how much more context that you can put into the box to get a really super detailed output. And so that's actually a response, the input and the output on the token limits. It's the input and the output. It can't exceed both, right? So if you give it this huge wall of text and then ask it to write another huge wall of text, it's not going to work. So you have to break it, you have to chunk it down. So that's what the different token limits between 3 and 4 are. So there are also studies talking about 1 and 2 million token limits. And so I love this conversation that I had with Chris and Justin the other night. Justin was like, what would you possibly do with 1 million token limits? For context, if you had 1 million token limits in a single go, that's the entirety of the Harry Potter book series. It's 5 continuous days of audio transcriptions. So it's a huge amount of data. And when I said that, he was like, well, still, what could you possibly do with that? And I love Chris's example. He goes, give it the Harry Potter series and tell it to rewrite it as a Jedi. I love that, right? And so think about, some of these ways in which we can start to expand this. We're talking about perpetualized tutors that remember your scores and remember what you've done as you've grown up and gone through the years. Or, could potentially, privacy, right? But medical history, right? There's still a lot of work to be done, and the founders of OpenAI talk about this when it comes to healthcare, but at the point they're approaching this from the mindset of, some healthcare is better than no healthcare, and a lot of people don't have healthcare access or knowledge to the access to the knowledge of healthcare. So this could, obviously, under the right circumstance, be a game changer for that. Creative, I mean, I think we just mentioned this one, right? Creative assistant novels, our own personalized movies, right? As we keep going in the future, and as fast as this technology is advancing, you're going to be looking at a scenario in which we can create our own version of our own favorite movies by giving it a prompt. Like, it's not that far away. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to even say, but it's true. Huh? Yeah, yeah. Legal advisor and a virtual companion. This one, I'm big on self-development. I'm a huge self-development nerd. And so this was one of the use cases. I was like, can I feed it my brain and my perspective and all this other stuff, and just use that as a jumping off point whenever I have a problem or if I'm stuck somewhere, and put that project on the back burner, but didn't get anywhere. It's not working on anywhere. All right. So let's talk about some prompts, right? These are some tips. A lot of this, not a lot of it, but some of the information was actually pulled from a webinar that was just released a couple weeks ago from Deep Learning and OpenAI in a partnership, which taught people how to basically engineer prompts the way that the prompt engineers are doing it. So creating high quality output is clear and relevant context and instructions, as I mentioned earlier. One of the things that I didn't know, and I got tripped up on this all the time, and I was so jazzed to learn this, delimiters. Who knows what a delimiter is? Nobody, except for maybe the tech people. A delimiter is any series, it's usually 3 for all the examples were 3 apostrophes or 3 dashes, 3 pluses. And you are basically telling the system, this is a cordoned off section of the text. So if you're trying to write a prompt and you're saying, give me a content based off of this example, and you typically might maybe do a colon and then paste the example there, right? But it doesn't know if that's a part of the sentence or not. And so if you put that delimiter in there and you separate that example from the rest of the prompt, you're going to get a much cleaner output because it's not trying to predict this jumbled mess of words on the page. So delimiters, that was a great eye opener for me.
So what did you say was the prompt for that? Was it 3 dots?
You can do any of it. So I personally do the 3 little dashes.
Because I've done that. I'm like wondering if I did it correctly. Like if I
on the front and the back end. Yeah, it's on the front and back end, and it's usually like 3 of them, not just one. It's 1 or 2. Of yeah, actually, I can show you in the example. I don't have it in the example currently, but I will show you where to put it. You had a question?
Yeah, so I was going to go back and ask you, when you talked about providing context and examples, my question was, what are the best practices for providing context and examples? So
I'll give you an example. Yeah.
Base it off of this.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, correct. Okay. Yeah, and I'll show it to you in this example in a bit. So you can ask for structured output too. So if you're working on code, right? If you're asking for, a specific problem, you can then say, can you give this to me in JSON, or can you give it to me in HTML, or can you generate an SVG image, which is, I don't actually know how SVG images work. There are a bunch of code and letters and dots. All right, thanks. I know nothing about them, right? But you can ask for different formats and it will give it to you. You can ask for graphs and pie charts on this as well. And I'm not even going to get into the plugins that are coming to it, which is going to completely change everything that I'm talking about tonight. So we'll wait for that when it comes through. Check for assumptions. This is really good that you may have already seen, but basically at the end of the prompt, the task is to do X result. Do you understand? Do you understand the prompt? And if it doesn't, it's going to say, no, I'm not quite clear on what you're asking for. It seems like you're asking me to do this. And then you can then edit and change the prompt to say, no, that's not what I want you to do. I want you to do this instead. So you can clarify and give examples of what you're looking for. That's pretty much, we just talked about that. So dynamic variables, I love this. So dynamic variables are essentially, you can use them on the web as is, right? If you're using an email software, you see all the time, hey, first name, contact first name, right? And it pulls the person's first name. Similar to how this works. Essentially, if you designate a dynamic variable, let's say it's an SOP, and you put that in square brackets and you put SOP, and then you put equals and you put your SOP of whatever the task is going to be. Maybe it's to compile a spreadsheet or whatever it's going to be. And it's something that you're using multiple times in the same prompt. So when you define that and put the SOP in there, every time that you have to write out that SOP process, you can just write brackets SOP. And the engine is going to reference what's in the brackets above. And so it saves on your token limits. It allows you to get a much more rich output and kind of like be creative with what you're using with the tokens. So think about this from the perspective of creating and saving yourself time. When you're doing these, think about, your business SOPs, common FAQs, whatever else, information that you write on a recurring, consistent basis that you are also putting into the engine. You can just go create a Word doc and start defining what those dynamic variables are. And so every time you have to go create a social post, you can put your tone of voice. It's a great example. Tone of voice, fill out your tone of voice, super, super great, and put an example underneath it. There you go. I love to see that. Yep. That's why I get so excited about this, to see those moments.
That game changer. Instead of that's passwords for all your accounts on social media or business, but instead they're now configurations to have something powerful think for you, and the more efficient that you're using it, the more output you're getting.
Yep.
That saves you more time and money than you could ever fucking imagine.
Yep. Well, we can do a Q&A. We can do a Q&A. So yeah, so like the dynamic variables, like you can get it so detailed with it, right? If you have to so keeping going in the tone of voice, you can't just tell it like a brief synopsis of what your tone of voice is. You could, and it can get somewhere close, but it needs context. It needs your example. Why is this tone of voice this way? Oh, here's the text to pull it from. And so you're saving on those tokens, and you can do multiple tone of voices with it. One thread, yeah.
But does it need to take all of
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but you don't want to keep having to write the same thing in subsequent requests, right? So you can just once it gets that variable, you can just keep it there. If you have to use the word SOP three requests later, you can just use it and it's going to remember that. Yeah, in the same thread. Yeah. Yeah. So not necessarily, that's a great point. So not necessarily think that you're going to use the SOP bracketed in the, as an example, right? In the same prompt multiple times, but you could use it in the same thread after 3 or 4 responses and then have to keep coming back to that kind of thing, right? All right, I already talked about token spaces with that. So, okay, now let's talk about some basic prompts, right? Chances are we've all done these basic prompts, right? Craft a tweet, generate an engaging question to encourage audiences, create an Instagram caption. And because of the heavily refined models that we have with GPT-3, 3.5, and the other language models like Bard and well, being used as GPT, but they're good. They put out some really good stuff. But take it a step further with, dynamic, I don't call them dynamic prompts, but it is, right? So see how much longer and more detailed and rich in content this is. This is actually something that I use specifically. A lot of this knowledge is a great point. A lot of this knowledge comes from me trying to do something for one of my clients and I am so lazy. I do not, I don't want to work hard. And the first thing I do is go to GPT, and I'm like, this is what I'm trying to do. How can I do this? And I actually wanted to create a long-term email nurture sequence, but I did not want to create sit there and use the engine to do it myself. I just said, can you write me a super elaborate prompt? This is the type of information that I want to put in my email nurture sequence. The job is I'm sending this prompt to my AI or my VA team, and they're going to use this prompt to generate the email for me. And so I gave it the example of what I'm looking for, basically the content idea, and then elaborate on the content idea, and then the prompt for the ChatGPT to write the email for it. And then part two is they took that list of content ideas that the first prompt generated, and then they copied the topic, the elaborative idea, and the prompt, and said, write the email for each one of the emails. And they all came out super consistent, very detailed, very elaborate. So it took me a couple times to get this iteration right, but that's when we talk about the iterative process, right? And making it better, because it's not going to be, great right off the bat.
How do you put the information? So if you have the totals limits, before, for example, if you want to write the sequence post in the same style,
Yeah.
posts, like if I want to get more detailed information, I'd have to fit it more information.
So there's a difference between token limits in the single thread, and I'm sorry, in the single request, and the overall threads limits. So the overall thread has a limit. GPT 3.5, I think, is 8,000 words in the total thread before it kind of starts losing context and hallucinating a little bit. I didn't define what hallucinations were. This thing will give you, it sometimes doesn't know the answer, but it will give you an answer with authority. So keep that in mind, right? And so those hallucinations primarily come from, lack of memory and context, especially with the earlier model. With GPT-4, it goes up to like 16,000 words, or actually it's 24,000 words. So it's a decently long thread. So, if you are considering doing something like that, writing 20 something plus emails, I would probably cap it off and start a new thread. And then because you've already got the prompt, right? It's already got all the information it needs with the short prompt, and then you could just start over from there. Okay, so the last part on this is prompting the model to think. And what you want to do here is that if you're not getting the response that you want out of this model, it was so not cooperating with me the other day, you can actually write out an SOP for it. So you can tell it, step 1, read the text carefully. Step 2, write one sentence for each subtopic. Step 3, write a sentence that summarizes it. Step 4, combine the sentences to make a coherent paragraph, right? And basically, you've walked it through the steps that it should take to get to the desired output. And you can make those clearer, you can make those shorter, more concise, more elaborate, whatever you need. But it's going to then follow those steps. And if it doesn't, even after that, you can have it show like the work that it's doing to get there, right? You're trying to be patient with it and give it time to think, right? Because it's going to take each one of these things in sequential order. And if it's building a better answer in a sequential order, right? The random picker based on statistics and probability, like if you go through these steps, you're giving it a higher chance of succeeding and giving you the output that you want. Man, this is some real nerd stuff I'm realizing. All right, so how do you do this? How do you use this in your business? Automation is like the easiest thing that we want to talk about, right? So automate your lead gen process, right? I'm going to give an example that we worked with John and Laura for their lead gen process to use and leverage AI. Quality content. I think that's the first thing that everybody went to when they got access was how do I write my social posts? Because nobody wants to do that, right? Decision making. So I love this in terms of figuring out what can I do with my business. You can give it your Facebook ads reports. You can give it your Google Analytics data. You can give it any type of numbered data and ask it, what can I do with this information? I was tasked with creating an infographic for a stem cell clinic that all they gave me was this research paper. And so I ran it through Prompt GPT, which is a free website right now, promptgpt.org, I think, or .com. I'm sorry, it's PDF GPT, excuse me, it's PDF GPT, maybe.io. Just search PDF GPT. You can upload a PDF and it will reference that PDF and you can have a conversation about it. So I took it there and I was like, extract some data. Tell me what I can do with this. And it gave me that information. I ran it through ChatGPT and I had it create me a graph. So you can use this to play devil's advocate in your business, right? I'm thinking about making a pivot to a rental only space versus a personal training space. What are the pros and the cons? one of the really cool things about this is this technology is that it's going to free up a lot of brain power. If you think about the smartest people in our society, doctors, lawyers, engineers, all these people, they have to spend so much time crunching numbers and compiling data and looking at reports and analyzing things before they can actually ever get to the innovative stuff. And so this is going to free up massive amounts of brain power and 10x the leverage that people are going to be able to do to create actual cool stuff, because all you have to do is know kind of surface level information and how to interact with the models. This one specifically is going to be from a man Sheldon over there. So if you're looking to close a deal, there are a few ways in which you can do this, right? You can actually have it, if you're engaged in negotiations over email, you can feed all the email threads in, you can feed the details of the deal in, what your perspective is, what you expect to get out of it, and you can ask it to give you the other person's perspectives, alternative perspectives. If you want to role play the actual sales conversation, you can do that as well. I want to prepare for the sales conversation. Please give me some topics. Please give me some things from his point of view that may come up in the conversation. And if you're a fan of Chris Voss, the FBI negotiator who wrote the book Never Split the Difference, you can actually ask it, how can I apply Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference tactics and principles to this sales scenario? And it will give you an answer based off of the information that you've given it. It's wild when you think about this stuff. So that is one way. Those are a few ways in which you can leverage AI in your business. So when we talk about John and Laura's situation, right? So I've built them a form. We all fill out lead forms on websites every day, right? And what is the general response that comes back?
Your form has been submitted.
There you go. So we wanted to take a step further. I figured out that we could send this form information to ChatGPT and have it understand what happened, reference John and Laura's SOPs and the way that they work with people, and deliver a response based off of that. So this is basically the 5 questions. What's a goal or objective? What's a quality or characteristic that you're looking for in a life coach? What is a significant barrier that you think is holding you back? What would be your definition of success? And what are you looking for in a coach? I think I already said that. And so it takes that information, and this is the real example, the input that I gave it, and then this is the response that came out of it.
We personalized it.
It's personalized to the person's answers, and it's designed to, one of my friends that tested this was really short. She gave it really dumb answers, and she called herself stupid and stubborn. And the AI returned a response that says, we understand you want to prioritize your health, but can sometimes make unwise decisions. And so it's making these reference points. And so think about what that does to your conversion rate when somebody sees a form that's not, thanks for your submission, we'll get back to you in 24 hours, but it's this, right? Think about what that does to somebody's psychology, and it comes within 5 minutes. And so they're thinking about that, and like they're already thinking about it, right? So especially, I don't want to think about this in a time of crisis, but if somebody's having a really difficult day and they're looking for help and they get this response, what do you think it's going to do to them? Right? It's a very high likelihood that they will convert over after that. Yeah, that's an AI enhanced automation.
Accurate to the communication, like to the way we would have responded. So it literally is like it was coming from me or my wife.
Yeah, and it took a few iterations to get there, but it got to be really, really good, really accurate.
Really.
So, all right, I'm almost at the end here. We are in the digital gold rush right now. I think I heard the number. I'm pulling this out of a hat. I heard it on a TikTok. Something like 3,000 AI startups were launched this month or last month, right? That's insane, right? We think about that. So when you think about, if people ask me how, we're all kind of wondering, how can we cash in? Because this is 100% the internet in 1992 right now with AI. It's going to completely reshape the entire world. And so, you can start to figure out how you can leverage this. And Chris and myself I have got no programming knowledge whatsoever. I built a no-code app. I built a chatbot. I built this automation, like all from just doing this stuff. And so you don't have to know, super high level technical jargon, coding, CSS, all this other stuff to take advantage of this. Just utilize the tools and figure out how you can solve problems with it, because more and more tools that are becoming more publicly accessible are coming out every single day. And you can take advantage of these and use these to solve these problems. So here are a few of them. Here are a few of my favorites. Perplexity is an AI answer engine that summarizes basically what your question is, and it provides it with real-time, real-live data from search results. This is getting a little bit deprecated now because essentially Google is open barred to everybody. and Bing is also open to everybody. So it's essentially doing the same thing. Synthesia is AI video and audio transcription. So if you don't want to be in front of a camera, you can use Synthesia to create an avatar for your business or your brand. Firefly is also an art generator in the Adobe family. You can use it not only to generate images and edit images, but also to fill in and enhance video as well, which is really cool. 11 Labs is probably my personal favorite on this. You can clone your voice or clone anybody else's voice. So another example I used, I have a stem cell clinic that I'm doing work for. I wrote a blog post for them, turned it into a video, and then cloned the doctor's voice because he had given me a speech that he'd done. I cloned his voice and I used it to narrate the video, which was cool, right? It was really fun. Gamma is the PowerPoint, the presentation that this was built on. This is built on Gamma. You basically go to Gamma. You can go with a fully built out deck in terms of like your structure and your wording. You can put that deck in there and it will generate the images and the visuals, graphs, all that stuff. It's really cool. It does have some limitations, but you can also do websites with this too. Stability is, if you've seen any of those AI images, that's a stable diffusion model. That's what stability is all about. And Illustrator is a vector and graphics and icons generator. So it's basically a text to image icon generator, which is really great for web designers who don't know how to get or design great graphics like me. So that's it. That's it. If you've got questions, I mean, I think I'm over the time, but I'm not in charge here.
We'll just take questions as long as you want. But if you question, raise your hand so I can get a mic.
Very easy. Has this been recorded?
It has been recorded, yeah.
Can we have a link to it? How do we get that link?
It's not going to go through here. It's for the computer. If register, that's a really great question. My cards, if you want to email me, if you signed up via Eventbrite, I will email the Eventbrite registrants the presentation. But if you did not, just take one of my cards and just shoot me an email. Say, hey, I want the presentation, and I'll email it to you tomorrow. Bonnie.
Question.
Yeah.
So two things. I texted you about this weekend, but thing number one is I did put something in and it gave me a statistic that was completely wrong. And that was kind of scary to me. And I was telling you about this. I was trying to write a speech and it gave me facts or I wanted it to sound like me. And I put in, make it more charismatic, make it more engaging. And it just didn't give me something that would sound like what a person would say to them.
So did you give it examples afterwards? That was one. That's the first way. Give it examples. So again, predictive text. It's going to look at that example and say, okay, well, first of all, if you said, we'll go back to the example of kind of like aligning it and pre-training what the style and the tone of voice is. If you give it the context and then, give it a little additional example context with an example, it's going to come back with a better response. And then when it does come back, you go through your iteration process. If you're still not happy with it, I'm not happy with it because this doesn't sound human. You can actually say that to it. You can tell it, this doesn't sound human. Make it more empathetic. There's no dumb questions. Sort of. So we all communicate tone of voice differently in our brands, right? I very information driven. Like I like to use analogies. I like to make things simple and not get too technical and jargon. So mine is helpful and informative while also using a lot of metaphors and examples. And so it's going to break that information down. And so you can, so here is another little hack that you can do. You can say that, right? So you can start a new thread, give it your emails, give it past speeches, whatever else, right? And you could say, please break this down and decode this. I want to understand what the exact tone of voice is. And it's going to break that information down for you. And you have that as a prompt now. And so that's your prompt. And then you go to a new thread and you give it an example of the tone of voice and say, this is the tone of voice style. This is the tone of voice example. Please write it in this tone of voice.
Is that broken down into just one prompt?
After you create the tone of voice, yes.
Okay, so when you're giving an example to decode a tone of voice, thank you, Chris, are you continuing to feed it a bunch of examples in one prompt, or
you can? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need that much. Okay. Just give it enough. If you're on GPT-4, throw 7 or 8 pages at it and let it, because again, the more that you give it, the more it has to pull from and the more it has to understand and make confirmations as it digests the information. Oh, well, he looks like he uses analogies, and then you use 16 analogies. At the end of it, it's going to go, he loves to use analogies, right? So the more information that you give it, you're going to keep repeating your behaviors. It becomes consistent, and the engine can understand what the consistencies and the patterns are.
Okay, so and I guess my question too is it important to give examples after it generates a response to not mess with the token limit? I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
I really wouldn't, honestly. If you're not getting what you're looking for, give it some more until you can. But once you get something that you're happy with, I wouldn't give it more examples. I'd just let it run because it's going to remember that. It's going to remember that example earlier.
How does this react with shared documents? Like if you have a client, I have a lot of clients that are large companies,
Yep.
and we work a lot with like shared documents.
Yep.
And I have all their stuff documented from the past. And so can you put those URLs and work with that with the ChatGPT?
Unfortunately,
or do you like
not.
copy and paste from the document?
Yeah, unfortunately not. You can't. It can't read a URL. It can't read a URL and then understand. There are tools which I didn't talk about in this, which is but what tool are you using though?
Just ChatGPT.
Mm-mm. ChatGPT doesn't have access to the internet.
Yeah.
Unless you have a plugin for it.
About this, referencing this form. With this blog post, I was writing I told ChatGPT to write a blog post referencing another blog post.
Yeah.
And specifically to pull statistics out of that blog post, and it did that.
What was the date of the blog post?
What was the data about?
No, what was the date of the blog post?
Within the last month, like 2
It
weeks ago.
definitely didn't have it.
So how did you get the percentages exactly correct?
I don't know about that, but I can tell
And
you,
reference
unless you have a plugin to access the web search with it, it's not pulling a blog post from a month ago.
Interesting.
That's what's on the.
It could, yeah, it could be in the database, yeah. So so I mean, to kind of close that point out, plugins are coming to ChatGPT. The web search plugin, which will go out and search the web, do the specific reference on the URL, and then like summarize the different articles in the search, and then give you a response based off of that. Plugins are going to change everything, and I won't talk about plugins tonight too much.
Just one more follow-up question. Is there a platform that does graphics too, like social media
Yes.
graphics
Yes.
or videos?
Yep. Yep.
Which one is that?
So there are several, right? They're not great, but there's several. I mean, Canvas has introduced it. Firefly is one of them. Midjourney is the best out of all of them. It does have a problem with text generation and fingers. It can't do fingers. But Deep Floyd is a new image AI model that came out within the last 2 weeks that you can actually input text in the AI generated prompt and get AI generated images with proper text explanations on them soon. I don't really do too much with the image space, so I can't really answer accurately. In theory, yes, because a video is just a series of moving images. So there probably are engines out there that can take a bunch of images and animate it. Because I know that there are a lot right now. We all saw the craze with Lenzo, right? When we put our pictures in and it generated all these great AI portraits of it. So I'm sure the capability is there. I just don't do much in the image space.
The Canva one definitely takes some finagling. I was trying to get it to create an image for a very specific reference, which was a flamingo in a flock of pigeons. It did not understand pigeons. Like it kept giving me every other bird in the universe but pigeons. The flamingo it got, pigeons it couldn't.
Yeah.
So the other thing I would say, you mentioned watching out for inaccuracies, and I would be remiss if I didn't say also please watch out for bias. Most of the information that's being fed into this is coming from white straight men. And so if you're a person of color, just and I'm trying to encourage more people of color to interact and feed stuff into these models so that the bias goes down. For the brand and tone of voice stuff, I just learned this. So I'm sharing something that I just learned, which is you can ChatGPT, what would you ask me to truly understand my business and brand? And it will go, great, here's 20 questions for you to answer. And then you answer those 20 questions, and now it understands your brand and your tone of voice.
Great addition. Great addition. Bard. Yeah, I've used so I zip across all three depending on what my need is. So I've done a lot of work with like creating ideal customer avatars, which is a really cool use case for this. Um, Basically, I started with GPT because it's got internet access. I wanted to know what would be the, what are the search terms, what are the search intents and volumes and keywords for somebody that's seriously considering knee replacement surgery, right? And it spit out the keywords, right? You can use it for keyword research. Bard is, it's Google, right? So Google's the 800-pound gorilla in the search market, so it's got a lot more context on search data. Bard is a lot better at programming, though. Yeah, it's better at programming. GPT is good. It's good, but I think that Bard is better because I'm really in the text and like idea and like problem solving situation. I don't kind of branch out too much into the code space. I don't know how to code. But they announced yesterday at their I/O that it can now read and write 20 different languages, 20 different code languages. So, oh, definitely not.
Nuances, like you're saying that it comes up with like text that are
No. Yeah, Google's actually they caught some heat, they caught some flack, I think, because they are using GPT to train their model. So yeah, they're kind of lagging behind, which is wild, right? Who would have thought that Google would be behind in the AI race? Yes, Chris.
Did I hear you say something like this? Let's say somebody has a website and they run the Google Analytics, and you said I could just feed it that and say, hey, what do I do with this? So
Yeah, actually, I can't. Mine's not plugged in, but I did this with just some Google Analytics data the other day, just on a whim. I just downloaded and exported the data for the whole site and put it into GPT-4, and I said, tell me something about this." And it just like went into a summary that says that you had a 50% uptick in new visitors on Tuesday of this month, and they spent the longest amount of time on this page or whatever else. It's basically the information that you get from Google Analytics, but who knows? Who is a Google Analytics expert in here? I have been working with it since 2012, and I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. So, just export that data and have it give you actionable insights on it.
that's a wow.
That's a wow.
How do you give it
Oh.
if it doesn't have access to the internet?
You download the spreadsheet from Google Analytics, export your data as a spreadsheet, copy the spreadsheet data into ChatGPT, which is going to be a thing of the past very, very soon. They have Code Interpreter now, which is basically oh my God, Code Interpreter. If you work with spreadsheets, it's going to change your entire life upside down, totally. You can upload a spreadsheet thousands and thousands and thousands of cells deep, and you can say, write a synopsis on this spreadsheet. Give me actionable insights on it, whatever you want to know about it. With what I'm talking about specifically, Code Interpreter is you drag and drop the file into the box. It hasn't been released yet. You have to be on the wait list for it, which is something I did. It was on the slide. As you go through, as you're seeing these products on your TikTok feeds and your feed, whatever social feed you are, and you see these cool new tools, go get on a wait list. It doesn't hurt you, doesn't cost you anything, and you get access to super cool stuff before the rest of the public does. Like, if you want, go to OpenAI right now, sign up for all the plugins wait list for sure. GPT-4 API access if you're not already using GPT Plus. What else is on waitlist? Whisper is what we use to do transcriptions. It's a lot of cool stuff. So yeah, go get on waitlists. They're going to pop up all over the place. So
Can you
there's no
explain
downside.
what does the API do and how you can implement it in your business? So, like, for example, I've got the API access. What the hell do I do with it?
So I didn't mention this, but a really great way. I'm so upset with myself because I talk about this. I say this often. A great way to kind of explain this is that the people who made refrigeration, right? They made a lot of money, I'm sure, but Coca-Cola built an empire on refrigeration. And so GPT is the engine, it's the refrigeration. What people are going to do with the API is going to be what builds empires. And so you could just think about this as kind of like a very, very raw assistant that's capable of so many things, right? So if you have the API, you can then connect things. It allows you to connect different applications together and plug in GPT in the middle of it. That's essentially what AI enhanced automations is what I'm doing with clients now, is figuring out what is a creative solution. What is a problem that you have in your business right now? The form fill is a great example. What are some things that you can look at for your business that are areas in which you can not necessarily automate or delegate, but that do need a human touch. They do need a little bit of human interaction. And then you can replicate that. You can train the model to do that.
So Marcus claims to be super lazy. I pride myself on being lazier than him. So I reached out to Marcus. I said, "Hey, so backstory real quick is I'm working on a missile silo in Kansas, and it's solar grid, and it needs batteries. If you know solar that charges batteries, then it's run off the batteries if the grid goes down. So we have 6 batteries we bought. Back to the grid holds 8. 6 batteries were stolen from some locals in Kansas. So now we needed to purchase 6 batteries again. Remember, the pack holds 8 batteries. So I reached out to Marcus and I said, "Hey, just like you, sir, I'm like this." He told me he has a little alien robot in his pocket that he talks to and he gives him answers on how to do things in life. So I didn't want to learn it, so I reached out to Marcus, wanted him to get on board, and said, "Hey, can you help me out with this? We don't want to pay for the batteries. We want sponsorship from the company. We want them to donate the batteries because they're like 4,500 a battery. We need 6 batteries. So it's very expensive. We just purchased the 6, and we're SOL now." So I reached out to him. He gave him some information. He sent me. He's like, "Give me a little bit." It's like 15 seconds later, he comes back with, well, he knows exactly what to put into the search engine or this alien robot thing, and he gave me 3 options of what to send him. So I took that, added a few more words into it to make it more personable, like my name and things like that, and then I sent it to the company, to all the people in the company, and that what he gave me got the door open to them actually reading it rather than just some random, "Hey, we're looking, we're desperate." So it was like stats. He gave me stock numbers and videos and all this kind of data that it's very impressive for somebody to look at. So they reached out. I didn't even at the end of the story, but so a few days ago we went back and forth. They got us a call with the CEO of the company. Went all the way up to the chain. We had like 3 5-minute calls, and then the email I just got is, Robin Sheldon, thanks for your patience. We have agreed to provide the 8 units for free of charge for the missile silo project. We look forward to our mutual partnership efforts. We will coordinate with the installation company to make sure it's completely no charge. So we had 6 batteries. They got stolen. We now got 8 batteries times 4,500. Do the math. 35,000. Is that about right? $34,000. We were just about to, and we just said, wait a minute. Let's just try to see if they want to get on board. But he showed the value to the company. So going forward, if you have, in life, I'm starting to learn from Marcus and things. Don't pay for anything. Just have an alien send an email, and they might. The initial email that they sent back to us before we really sent them this, before I sent them this email that he made was, we're going to give you $100 off per battery. So that was not enough for us, obviously. So, but yeah, thanks, Marcus. So definitely reach out to him for your business, and if you don't understand it, like it's like Chinese to us, reach out to him and his company because he's very passionate about it. So, cheers.
I didn't know that. That's awesome. So the context, the further context behind that is that this is a cool and unique Airbnb, right, in the missile silo, right? So imagine the social media traffic that's going to get from influencers, all this other stuff. So the idea that I had was, can you please I went to Bing and I said, can you please give me examples and statistics of viral Airbnb videos on TikTok, Facebook, whatever else, right? And it came back with a list of the channel name, the video, the description of the property, and then the views that came back. And so I said, okay, well, now we've got this information. Can you please write this email? And I gave them the situation of what was happening. We're trying to get these batteries free, and we're taking the angle that this person is going to get a ton of the monetary value that they would otherwise have to pay for with paid media ads. They're going to get it for free because of all the people that are coming to this unique Airbnb. And so that's where the value was created.
Wow.
Dude, that's awesome.
It's a recording. It's a recording.
I'm going to follow up on
okay, let's hear about the blog.
So because I went at the thing, this is how smart this AI is. My prompt was, write a blog post of up to 1,500 words in English targeting CEOs of mid-sized companies. The topic is the tsunami of change to be required of business processes and models because of AI. Reference statistics from this article. Okay, so the output it gave me was, the part that matters is, according to a recent article by Goldman Sachs published on CNET, generative AI could impact an astonishing 300 million jobs worldwide, blah, blah, blah. And then it talked about more roles are going to be created and a seismic shift and an opportunity. It got all of that from this, https, cnet.com. Text/generative AI could impact 300 jobs, Goldman Sachs predicts.
Did you follow that link?
The link?
Yeah.
Try it.
Try the link.
I pasted, that was part of my
Oh,
prompt.
okay.
So what I'm saying is, it didn't read the article if it can't get on the internet, but extracted from the link text what I wanted.
This is going to be one of those moments where I'm going to agree to disagree, because I specifically, like, this is like, I am doing stuff to read URLs, and so I want that. And so I've asked so many questions regarding specifically giving an AI a link to pull data, because I wanted to be able to reference a specific URL and pull the data. The answers that I've gotten back from the documentation say that you cannot. It has to go and reference the URL and then extract the data out of the page. So it needs to have a web browser capable of doing that.
So we have to paste the article in.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying it's outside of what I have read and how it does it.
Well, and I could do it in this thread, I suppose. How did you get? Because it literally says the figure encompasses jobs that will replace as well as create. So here.
Because on our side, we did to get media copy, also emails specifically for a certain marketing we would do. We had to convert the entire website to text.
Yeah.
Pop that in and say, hey, this is who we are. Can we tell you who we are? This is what we want to do, where we want to go. This is who we want to talk to. Can you write prompts for it and include?
Yeah. One of the things I did want to mention is some of the. This comes from Sam Altman when he talked in his podcast with Lex Freeman, which is great. It's 2.5 hours long, but it's a great podcast. The things that you would think would be easy for these models to do actually aren't that easy for them to do. Specifically, write me a tweet that's 72 characters long. Like making something a specific link that struggles with to do that. So just keep that in mind. It's just a little tidbit I thought I'd give you.
With Greg at Pedal Pub, we were working on and we actually were able to tailor to his demographic, a specific demographic, using a specific tone, added emojis, and it created an entire Instagram post for it with hashtags.
Yes, I love it.
So it saved all the time that we normally would have done it, and it just did it for us. Okay, that's exact. Or we said, okay, tweak it to an older crowd, or make it funnier, or make it more.
Did you get good results from it?
Write it in this tone of Shakespeare. Interesting. Yeah. So it's one of those great examples where you don't know why it gave you the answer that it did. So, that's just some things to keep in mind, right? When plugins release, and again, like did anybody watch the plugins webinar? Yeah, that Greg Brockman did. Nobody did. Oh my God! All right. Well, allow me to geek out. Allow me to geek out a little bit more. So Instacart, Travelocity, Booking.com, and Shopping Network Klarna, and Gmail and Zapier as a connector are now plugins. So imagine this example, right? Please write me a meal plan for the next 7 days. I want to eat Mexican food. I want to eat Chinese food. And I like to saute things. It will give you the meal plan. With the Instacart plugin, it will create the ingredient list. It will go and buy the ingredients and send it to your door. The other example that they gave was I'm going to go to a trip in San Francisco at the end of the month with my friend Frank, whatever it's going to be. Find me the cheapest flight, find me a hotel for one night, and then I also need a bathing suit. Found all the examples. It gave him the list of all the flights, and it gave him a list of the examples for the bathing suit. And then he said, I like the bathing suit number 3. Send that to my friend Greg. And it composed the email and sent the email to Greg. And so and that's exclusive of the web browser specifically. The web browser, not only it's a taste of it now with ChatGPT on Bing, but the one that OpenAI uses is a lot better from what I've seen. It will continue searching through the results, and again, very, very not released stuff yet, so I only know what I saw in the webinar. It will continue searching through the relevant results and compile all of them together and summarize it as if it were a real person creating this research paper, and then give you the answer based off of the combination of all of those search results. And that's the web browsing capability, which is going to change everything. Yeah, it's going to change everything.
Because this is myself of the cybersecurity. One thing, we never put any confidential information in ChatGPT because we don't know where it's going or how it will be shared, or if you're secured while you're typing it. So just something to know.
Great point. Great point. They just released the option within the settings to turn off sending your data to be used in future training models. It's in the bottom left-hand corner. It's under your settings, and it's a data privacy. It's a little toggle. You toggle that on, and they won't send your data in the GPT model, in the ChatGPT interface. They won't send that back to the training database. If you're using the API, they don't. They don't collect it anyway. So just two little tidbits there.
Company that doesn't trust what they say.
Nope. You're at the whim. Are you really? You're going to trust OpenAI. And one of the things, I mean, I'm not here to get into the ethics of AI and all these things. I'm here because I can't control any of this aside from giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down and a reason why it didn't do good, which they do take that very seriously. It's like raising a red flag to say it didn't work like it was supposed to, and they're going to look into why it didn't. I don't really get into that side of things, but
we always see it as if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Yeah, for sure.
So as you feed it, it's learning. So it may not do it right, but then again, you're not really paying for the perfect service.
I lost my train of thought, but I'm now back on track. If you listen to OpenAI, thank you. If you listen to the founders and the high-level employees at OpenAI, they have a very, very, very strong emphasis on creating and including as many people in this technology because they believe that we should all shape this revolutionary technology together. And that was the reason why they got started, is that they did not want one company to control this massive transformational change in the entire world. And they're actually a capped for-profit company. They originally started as a nonprofit, but now they are a capped for-profit, meaning that their shareholders and their employees can earn stock share value up to a certain point. Anything over that, because this company is going to be worth trillions of dollars, flows into their nonprofit, which is then going to go and funnel research, universal basic income, several other things, right? So they have a very, very big emphasis on, creating guidelines and creating equality and making sure that everybody is included because they know the implications of what this is going to do to our society. And so everything that I've read from them or listened to them or watched them has been consistent with that. So I do personally feel, very, I don't want to say good about it, but I like the direction. Say what you will about Elon Musk or whatever else, but he's a very opinionated person and hot topic person. It's not the same vibe with OpenAI and the people that you hear talk at that company. So I, take them at their word, I guess. Do as they do, and they've currently got the largest universal basic income study ever done, continuously going because they know the implications of this thing. They've set up this capped for-profit company because they know the monetary value that they're about to capture. So, yeah, they could have went for the cash grab, but they didn't.